Suit up, strap in, warm the tires, and leave on yellow. Time for the MitsuTimes podcast. Presented by MitsuTimes.org, the home of the fastest Mitsubishi cars. With your host, Josh.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Josh from MitsuTimes. Today, our special guest is Joe Bucci, the owner and driver of that gray 1G I'm sure you've seen all over the internet. How are you doing, Joe?
Pretty good, Josh. How about yourself?
I'm doing great, man. I'm so glad to have you on. Obviously, you're one of the OGs, so it's good to talk to you.
Yeah, old for sure.
So tell us about your new gray 1G, because I think you're probably more well known for your old car, right?
Yeah, I think most people know me for my old car. I'm sure people have seen my new car around on the internet. The new car was a long project. I think it took me about 7 years before it finally ran, and throughout that time, sometimes resources were easy to come by, and sometimes they weren't. So sometimes I try to put the best parts I could on it. I always tried to put the best parts I could on it. Sometimes those parts weren't, the greatest parts I could get. The current setup on it, which is actually getting changed as we speak, is the stock block and crank with R&R aluminum rods. It's got 10.5 to 1 Weisco pistons in it. Kurt Brown 2G head with a Kurt Brown ported Evo 3 intake. It's got HKS 272s and an HKS gasket on it. I started with stock frame setup, mostly for the cost, keep the cost down.
Yeah.
My buddy Tom, he had one of those Hafe Slowboy exhaust manifolds for me, which I preferred to have that larger gate opening rather than going through the factory gate hole with a O2 mounted gate. So I used that manifold with a tile 38 millimeter gate. And I started, the current setup was the FP0 on there, Zona parts in a bolt-on package, 62 millimeter compressor. And had an old school Busher front mount on it, some big Siemens Deka injectors, big air motive regulator, Weldon 2035A, and most recently the Haltech Nexus R5 on it.
Beautiful.
And it is an automatic trans, so it has a stock trans basically in it with just a Kigley 6-disc. And Aaron Gregory took care of my valve body for me. It's got stock axles in it. That's pretty much it.
Wow. Those stock axles they're it might be seeing their last days, I guess.
Yeah, those are currently getting upgraded.
There you go.
But those did start. I had some parts store axles I threw in there to get started, and they did not last long. So I actually broke both of those axles at the same time testing the stall up in the pit area.
Wow.
Yeah, so I finally sourced some stock axles. They're kind of mismatched parts. The way my setup is with a 2G trans in there, I had to use a 2G axle on one side and a 1GB on the other, but they're stock and they've lived well.
Wow. Okay, cool. Why did you end up choosing the 1G platform to build?
Well, it's funny. I had a girlfriend that had a first-gen Plymouth Laser front-wheel drive turbo with a stick. And, she claimed it was fast, and I was like, I don't know about that thing. I had a 280ZX at the time. It had 6-cylinder, so it must have been faster, right? Turned out it wasn't. So I kind of got interested in it, and that kind of got me interested in 4-cylinder performance mods overall.
Yeah.
So, I started looking at, magazines and stuff, and from the magazines, it looked like the Honda way was the way to go. So I bought a brand new Honda Civic, and it didn't take me long to figure out that those weren't fast. At least not, the way they come from the factory.
Right.
So I went back and started looking at DSMs and ended up buying my first 1G Talon all-wheel drive 5-speed, and it went from there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So your new gray car, what was it like when you bought it?
The new gray car, I kind of knew what I wanted because I'd already gone through it with the other car, Project Goodwill car. So I knew I wanted to start with a base model, 1.8 car. It has the manual rack, and the interior panels are lighter, and there's just cuts everywhere for them to keep that car cheap that actually keep that car light. So that's what I wanted to start with, and I basically stripped it all the way down to a bare unibody, nothing else you could unbolt off of it. Media blasted it bare and put a coat of epoxy primer on it and started putting it back together from there. It was a long project.
Well, it's definitely the results look like they're definitely well worth it.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, I wanted it to be a nice, clean car, well put together, more than fast or whatever. Right? It needed to be well put together, you know.
So you had the FP0 in it for a while. Was you running a 16G on this one, or have you had any different setups in this gray one so far?
Yeah, when I was first putting it together, like I said, I had some times where money was tight, things like that. So I wanted to build it a certain way from the start, but I had to cut some corners and get the car running so I could enjoy it. Like after 6-7 years of working on it, it was time to drive it. So I ended up throwing a Force Performance HTA 68 on it, which is similar to a 16G, a little bit more power there.
Yeah.
It originally had steel rods in it, a valve body, basically a stock valve body with just a shift kit in it. It had the Link G4 ECU in it, which for the cost was a pretty good ECU. There were a lot of things I liked about it, but there were some things I didn't. And it had a set of HKS 264s in it that I actually borrowed from my brother just to get the thing running. So those few things were about the only things I changed on the car between when I got it running and when it was last running.
Okay. So obviously when you broke into the 9s, you was running the FP0.
Yeah.
Pretty much the same setup.
Yeah, it's very similar setup. Like those things I just said were switched out. The turbo, the rods, the valve body. I actually ran 9s on the Link ECU.
Oh wow.
And the 264s. There was it didn't take much, honestly. Like the car ran pretty good, and I mean I tried to make it run good. I tried to plan it out and make sure that it worked when it got to the track. So that was nice. It ran, I think, the third pass ever on the car with the HTA 68. It went 10.7, which I thought was pretty good. But it wasn't competitive in the racing I was trying to do, so I quickly went to the 0, and it went 950 pretty quickly with the 0. So it was just after the turbo change was the big deal. It put it right in the 9s. It went 990, I think, first pass with the new turbo on it.
Wow. Yeah, I definitely been thinking about switching out my FP Black for FP0 just to see if I can get any faster.
Yeah, the FP0 makes good power. It's got that 62 millimeter compressor wheel, and it's got the big 10 centimeter turbine housing on it with a 64 millimeter turbine wheel,
Yeah.
The coolest thing is the Zona center section is that billet stainless Zona rotor center section, but it's designed in a way where it bolts right on a 1G DSM. It's actually a pretty cool feat of engineering, in my opinion. It looks beautiful.
So I was going to ask you why you were going to keep pushing the stock frame turbo, but it sounds like you're upgrading. So if I may, I would like to ask why you decided to go with the front wheel drive again.
I just enjoy the front wheel drive. I enjoy a little bit of challenge associated with it. I also enjoy that I don't have to buy expensive drivetrain parts, from the front wheels back. I don't have to buy a transfer case, drive shaft, rear end axles, any of that stuff. And that stuff, on a DSM, it's kind of its downfall. That stuff tends to be fragile. Even some of the good aftermarket parts, they don't last forever.
Right.
So it was kind of a financial thing and less stuff to have to work on. So I've just enjoyed the front wheel drive since the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that being said, if you could start all over, would you do this gray car build exactly the same?
Yeah, it's funny. The gray car is really me starting all over. That's exactly what it is. When I had my Project Goodwill car, that car was all about spending as little money as possible, trying to go fast for cheap. And I always dreamt of being able to build that car, with a good budget, so that I could put nice parts on it and really see what it could do. So this really is my do it again car.
With all the kind of parts and switching it up, what motivates you to keep going with this gray car, to keep pushing it and trying to make quicker passes with it?
I think in my mind, I have some numbers that I think it should hit as far as performance numbers go. And to be completely honest, I don't think I reached my goals on the FP0. I feel like that car should have been a good bit faster with that setup. And I kind of figured out what the problem was as I started taking it apart. I did have it on the dyno briefly, and I actually lost a head gasket on the dyno, which is why I say it was on there briefly. But the couple pulls I did get on the dyno, the power curve was honestly terrible. It looked like an upside-down U. There was no top-end power at all. And that was holding me back. I could feel that on the track. Felt really, really strong out of the hole through the mid-range, but in the top end, it was like I should have just eighth-miled the car. Its eighth-mile times are better than its quarter-mile times.
Interesting.
And I believe what it's come down to, I found out, is that the valve springs that were in that cylinder head, I bought that cylinder head used. Good valve springs, but they were very old. And I think they were on their last legs.
Okay.
My machinist told me, he said, "You've been running these springs?" and that was kind of the answer to my question there.
So the new upgrades hopefully include some new valve springs.
Yeah, there are new valve springs on the cylinder head already. I don't really want to go into too much detail about what's getting done to the car right now, but I can tell you that every aspect of it is being upgraded.
Nice.
So that I can take a good shot at the X front-wheel drive or sport front-wheel drive classes at events like FL2K and maybe Super Street up at World Cup Finals. Some of those cars have been deep in the sevens at this point.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I see my car going deep in the sevens, but I'd really like to see a low 8 out of it. I'd like it. I'd like to see some good times out of it. I think I know what it can run, and that's kind of what pushes me to keep doing it until I feel like it ran what I expect.
I mean, yeah, that's awesome. I can't wait to see what the new setup is. I guess I'll stay glued to your YouTube channel until then.
Yeah, for sure. If I can plug that.
Yeah, go for it.
Joe Wrenches is my YouTube channel. I have Facebook as well as Instagram you can follow me on as well. And, when I do have work to do, I am pumping out videos there you guys can check out.
So with the new setup coming out, do you have any goals for the end of this year with the car?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I hope to have it running by the end of this year. I actually have a ticket. I bought a tech card for FL2K, which is in October, beginning of October. So I intend to have it ready for that. And I would really like to put the car in the 8s this year. I don't know, maybe it'll go much faster than that, but that's all I really want to see right now.
Yeah. This episode of the MitsuTimes podcast is brought to you by Performance Part Out. Performance Part Out is your leading source for new and used DSM and Galant VR4 parts. John works tirelessly to precisely deconstruct salvageable parts in order to keep yours on the road. They stock everything from engine cores to gauges to injectors and much, much more. If they don't have it in stock, they can probably get it. Check out their huge selection at performancepartout.com. So do you have any event? I mean, I know we talked about it a little bit, but do you have any long-term power quarter-mile goals with this car? Just low 8s?
Yeah, the goal with this car has really always been 850. It's got an 850 cage in it. When I had that cage installed, Fat House Fabrications did that cage for me, and at the time, the fastest cars in sport front-wheel drive were going 850. Of course, it took me so many years to build the car that those cars have progressed quite a bit. So I'm sticking with my goal. My ultimate goal is to run an 850 in that car, but I'm going to have to try to push it farther to be competitive like I'd like to be in those classes.
Yeah. Okay. obviously this isn't your first Mitsubishi, but I would like to, for a second, talk about the red 16G car, the 16G record holder.
Yeah, does it? I thought Kevin beat it. I thought Kevin beat my record.
If he has, he hasn't sent me the slip. I haven't seen it come about yet.
Oh, okay. I think he should send that in, because I'm pretty sure he did beat it. But anyway, I held that record for a very long time with that car. That car started as just a 14B car, not looking to break any records, just looking to not spend any money. So, yeah, that car quickly broke the record for 14B power, or ET, and ended up running a best of a 1061 at 131, something like that, which I think it ran a 1067 without nitrous, and Justin Achille, I'm not sure how to say his last name, honestly. He beat that record a few years back at this point, probably 10 years after I set it. But I still do own the 14B record overall with a 60 shot, was a 1061. And honestly, my goal was just to run 10s on 14B. So at that point, I was done. I moved on to the 16G. And yeah, the 16G, I ran 10.0, I don't know how many times with that setup. I ended up blowing the turbo up. It was one of those old China GTs that came out back in the day. Yeah. And I sent it to Force Performance and asked if they could fix it for me, and they did. And it wasn't too long after I got the turbo back from them that it went 9s.
That's amazing.
Again, I was just looking for 9s. I wasn't. I had already surpassed any record, by quite a bit. So once it went 9s, I took that car down, and I was going to do some upgrades. And then what happened was my daughter was born, and I focused my time and energy, on her until she got too cool for me. And then that's when I bought this gray car, got back in it, and here I am.
Awesome. So has there been any other DSMs or anything in between?
Yeah, I've had a few. I had my old all-wheel drive Talon, the 94 Talon. That was a car I drove to work every day, and it had been 11.2 at 127 back in the 90s. At one point, Tom Tharp of Tom's Turbo Garage, he had bought an Eclipse. I think he had the Eclipse. And he had his Mirages, and he wanted to put the 2-liter from the Eclipse in his Mirage, so he did that. And he was left with a Eclipse with no engine and a 1.6 from a Turbo Mirage. So I bought those two things from him and put the 1.6 in the Eclipse, and I drove that thing for a while, as strange as it was.
No kidding.
Yeah. I had, like I said, my old girlfriend back in the day had that Laser, and that girlfriend ended up getting married to her, and she had a couple of 2Gs throughout the years that we messed around with a little bit. And I feel like I'm missing something. Oh, yeah, I had a 91 Talon at one point, a gray one that was a pretty clean car that I sold to another DSMer. He's still driving it around. One of the Orlando DSM guys, Chad, is still driving my old gray Talon that 111.2. He's still driving that around, so pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. So I know there's a lot of people out there, they have a 1G front-wheel drive, or let's say they even have a 2G front-wheel drive, and everyone's telling them they should just go out and get a GSX instead of trying to build their front-wheel drive. So I was hoping that you would hopefully provide some advice for those DSM front-wheel drive owners.
Yeah. What I learned over the years, I have good news and bad news. The good news is that a front-wheel drive with some slicks on it and a good differential cuts pretty good 60-foot times on the track. It's not a huge benefit to go all-wheel drive over front-wheel drive when you're on the track. The auto guys, I think, have changed that. The auto guys are cutting crazy 60-foot times. But for the most part, especially when I started doing this, I could cut just as good 60s on the track with slicks as my all-wheel drive friends. So I never felt like it was that much of a handicap. The bad news is On the street, front-wheel drive is kind of terrible. Unless you love burnouts. So I think for my front-wheel drive guys, if you're going out to the track and racing, or maybe you're going to Mexico and doing some racing, you put some slicks on, you're going to be all right. But on the street with your radials, you might as well just keep to yourself a little bit, because they're not very good on radials on the street.
That's awesome. Yeah, I hope to. It's almost disappointing how many front-wheel drive cars there are on both the DSM lists. So hopefully some people, will hear that and take their car to the track and feel how much fun it is.
Yeah, for sure. You just got to get it out there, get some good tires on it, and practice. Man, you got to make passes. I made hundreds of passes back in the day, learning what these cars like and what they don't like, and that's what it takes.
Awesome. So we talked about FL2K. Is there any other events that you plan to attend in 2022 that somebody could see this car in action? I know sometimes you make a appearance at the shootout, sometimes with the car, sometimes without.
Yeah. I really love the shootout. I love to make it up there. I don't spend all my time worrying about how many people are coming, or things like that. Discussions happen like that about the shootout, but this year they moved the shootout, and it's now 1 week before FL2K.
Oh.
Which causes an issue for me, because honestly, at this point, the way my car is getting built right now, it's getting built for FL2K, not for the shootout. So there's a good chance I'm going to miss the shootout this year, unfortunately. If I think I can do it, and I think that I feel confident that it'll run after the shootout and be ready for FL2K the following weekend, I'll bring it. But that sounds scary, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely.
I will try to hit up whatever IFOs are in the southeast part of the country. I haven't looked at the schedule that closely. I haven't been super concerned about it until the car runs. But yeah, any IFOs in the area, certainly FL2K. I don't think it's going to make it to World Cup finals this year, but it's possible. If the car runs really good and I can get a spot there, I may do that, because that sounds like a lot of fun. That's a big, exciting event. I'd love to race at it. So,
definitely. That's kind of when you know you made it right there.
Yeah, for sure.
So, you've been doing the drag racing for a long time. The 1G list, I would say, arguably, I guess, that it is the toughest list to break into the top 10 on.
Yeah. Do you know what number 10 is on that list right now?
It is 8154 by Adriana on the Zona Rotor.
So it's getting close to be a 7-second list, top 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty tight. And there's some really fast cars out there. First thing that popped into my head is Nate from TPG, who has John Wigger's old 1G.
Yep.
I expect that car to move up into that part of the list once he irons that thing out. I believe he went out and made one hit the other day and got a new personal best, like an 880. That car's going to be fast for sure. It's got all the good parts, and it's got good people working on it. So, the other thing I want to see is I'd like to see Aaron Gregory get out of that 7-second zone and get into the 6-second zone. So try to push him to do that. I know it's hard work, though.
Oh, yeah.
That would be cool to see.
Definitely. To see both the 1G and a 2G into the 6s in the same year would be amazing.
Yeah, that would be really cool for sure. So I'd love to see that. Trying to think of who else. I know I keep thinking of guys who have sold their 1Gs right now. So
well, the 1G list, I mean, the top 10 is definitely some guys who aren't out there racing anymore. So, it's going to be some tough times to beat.
Yeah, definitely. It's not easy. People think, I see the argument all the time. I see the people saying I can build an 8-second DSM for $25,000. I think that those are the people that have never built an 8-second DSM. I've never built an 8-second DSM, but I can tell you that I don't think that's enough money. Not to do it reliably anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Not to be consistent.
You won't be competing in any events. You might make 1 8-second pass, but it's just not easy. Until you look at that list and see these people 8-1 and lower, 10 of them is very impressive.
Yeah, for sure. And it's so awe-inspiring to me, the top 10 of the 1G list. I mean, it's a second apart, but very, very, very fast cars.
Yeah, definitely.
It's crazy.
It's exciting.
Yeah, for sure. To see somebody trying to break into the top 10s, I mean, I can't wait to see a new face on the top 10, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. That would be cool.
All right, Joe. So I always give people an opportunity to give a shout out to anybody who helped them get where they are. Is there anybody that you want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, for sure. Force Performance. The first people I have to mention, Robert, and the rest of the people at Force Performance have been there for me, like I said, since back in the day when I had my 16G car. They've always been willing to help. They always have the best customer service, and I just like working with them. Also, Tile Sport has helped me out, and I appreciate them. Kigley Racing. I don't think I'm not the only one that loves Kigley Racing. They're huge in this community, and we're lucky to have them. Fat House Fabrications, who's done my cage work, and Secret. They've done my new fab work on my new hot parts kit, and it's amazing. And Performance Part Out, who's helped me with little obscure parts that I've needed for my car. John over there and Nate, they've always been there for me. I've been a competitor and a friend of Nate's for a very long time, and they're cool dudes over there. So I appreciate them.
All right, Joe. Well, I appreciate you taking the time out to come on here and talk to us. I hope that we've inspired some front-wheel drive guys to hit the track, and I hope to see update on the new setup and new time slip soon.
Yeah, for sure, Josh. Updates are coming, and it was great talking to you.
Absolutely, man. Have a good one.
All right, you too.
Thank you for listening to the MitsuTimes podcast. Check out our Instagram and Facebook for daily updates. Get added to our list by going to MitsuTimes.org and clicking Submit a Slip. Thank you to all of our sponsors.